Okay.
All right, we are recording. Go ahead.
All right, gavel slamming. We will now call the Planning Commission meeting to order for January 7th, 2021. And we will go to roll call. And so indicate aye. Commissioner Varenkamp,
Aye.
Commissioner Schulack,
Aye.
Commissioner Wu,
Aye.
and Commissioner Dickman. I think he said aye. And Commissioner Jacobs, aye. All right, so let the record note that we are all in attendance. For those that would like, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Brad. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you, everybody. Okay. Item 3 on our agenda is the chair and vice chair election. I think in the past, if there is anyone that would like to take the chair or the vice chair, certainly please throw your hat into it. Now, I did look though here. So Commissioner Wu and Commissioner Dickman, your terms are ending next month. I'm not really sure how we handle chair elections when they are going to be either or both of them may not be seated in the commission next month. So Brad, do you have any thoughts, or any other commissioners, how you guys want to handle that? Do we have any applicants for those chairs next month outside of the people who are already serving?
Chair members, no, at this time we don't. I'm going to be sending out applications to both Commissioners Wu and Dickman and begging them to continue their service for the most part. I've talked to a few council members who would like to see the existing commission continue as well. Even if that weren't the case, essentially what would happen is that the first meeting following a resignation or a non-continuation, I guess, we would just appoint a new person to continue at that time. So it's really not a big deal.
Okay, all right, good. All right, well, commissioners, what would you like to do for the upcoming year? Do we need a change of leadership? It seems to be the flavor of the season here with our elections lately. But I wouldn't take it personally if somebody would like to take over chair.
Mr.
No?
Chair,
Yes, Mr. Varenkamp.
if I could make a motion to, how can I say it, suggest the chair and the vice chair to remain the same for the following year.
And so let it be known then that as chair, that would be me, and then as vice chair, that would be Commissioner Dickman, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a second to the motion?
I'll make that a second.
All right, all those in favor of keeping the chair and vice chair as is for the 2021 year, say aye upon your name. Commissioner Jacobs, I vote aye. Commissioner Varenkamp?
Aye.
Commissioner Wu?
Aye.
All right, Commissioner Schulack
Aye.
and Commissioner Dickman? Okay, all right. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you all very much. And I think we work good as a team. And especially given the COVID challenges we've had, I've been very impressed with our abilities to go through the work. I'm impressed with our abilities to interact with our professional staff, and so it's been good in light of the challenges and the issues that we faced. I think we're a good group, so I'm pleased to serve with you all.
Likewise.
Okay, so we need to item 4, agenda approval. Now, there is item 6, the minutes. Brad had contacted me, and Brad, maybe you said it in your email earlier, but we will have to review the minutes from last month, next month. So we don't have that on the agenda here today for those minutes, but other than that, I think the agenda is as is. I don't think there's any other changes, or unless somebody would like to suggest corrections.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just some more background on that. So the minutes, I thought were supposed to be done by the planner who left us, found them not completed, and I didn't have time to do them. So I have bribed Mike to do them and these minutes, and we'll have them available next time. So we can just approve the agenda with the amendment of removing the minutes.
All right, very good. Thank you. All right, I'll have a motion to approve the minutes as is, or the agenda.
I'll make that motion. Shulak.
All right, I'll second that motion. And we'll take a vote. Commissioner Varenkamp,
Aye.
Commissioner Shulak,
Aye.
Commissioner Wu,
Aye.
Commissioner Dickman, and Commissioner, did I hear Mr. Dickman? I saw the lips move.
Yeah, and Commissioner Dickman, just so you know, we're not hearing any audio from you so far. We're seeing you, but we're not hearing any audio from you for some reason. So if you have something, we don't get to it, you can use the chat function possibly too.
Okay, and then Commissioner Jacobs, I vote aye. So the agenda is approved 5-0. All right, item 5, open forum. Is there any open forum items? Do you see, Brad, anybody chiming in from outside?
No, and so far all we have is the commission, myself, and 4 of our 5 city council members. So I will open it up, and maybe perhaps combining open forum and the new business public comment opportunity in one, since they're back to back. If anyone wants to speak in open forum, and I will just leave it up to you, Chair Jacobs, if you wanted feedback from the city council during the discussion while they're here, that's very appropriate too. It's the planning commission meeting, but they are here. So if anyone wanted to use the raised hand function, they could do so now, or else we could just keep moving on. So far, I don't have anybody at this moment.
Okay, well, we can do them both at the same time. To the city council members, thank you for joining us, and congratulations. I assume you all have been now sworn in, and we thank you for your contribution to the city. I don't think we've ever had 4 members at one time. So I don't know if you all have something you want to address with us, or if you're just interested in this month's business, but we would certainly open the floor to you at this time for anything that you wish to bring forward to this commission.
From my perspective, I joined because I saw you guys are looking at goals for the next year. So I just wanted to be able to hear what you're thinking, get your input. Maybe if I have things to add in and chime in, I'm happy to do that too. But as part of me getting up to speed on what's going on in the city, I try to attend all these that I can. So don't feel like I'm here to eavesdrop or interlope. This is your meeting.
Well, very good. Well, and certainly the more involvement we have, the better. And you know, to your point, you know, our annual report, you know, to be all honest, it really, the annual report is a nice recap that you know, that Brad and staff put together for us. And again, outside of some of the unique challenges that we have faced this year and the media in which we, you know, have conducted our business, I think is probably the biggest, you know, thing to report. I think we've proven to be effective in conducting our work on behalf of the city, despite the challenges. And you know, let's all face it, I think we all learned a lot, especially with the Eagle Brook Church thing. And so I was very pleased with the work that we did as a commission this year. Now, in setting goals, yeah, that's a big thing. I know that we have over the years put on, you know, things like tree preservation, you know, policy. Has never really gone anywhere outside of the wish list. But I think that there are some, I'm going to add a suggestion for a review of an ordinance tonight, or, you know, that we would like to, I'd like to at least see brought up to the city council. We'll get to that later, but we would certainly love to expand that out. But what I have a tough time understanding is that we as a commission, I think we all have different ideas about how we want to maybe look at this PUD thing and our zoning. And I know that as candidates, you folks on the city council have mentioned it. What we, you know, there's different ideas that I have and different things that I've maybe experienced in my early careers at the city of Eden Prairie that maybe tell me there's a way that this could be done differently. But those are the kinds of discussions we don't have the luxury of having at one of our regularly scheduled planning commission meetings. They obviously, you know, from history, they can be very involved and time consuming, and there's just not enough time to have that kind of thing. So for me, it's almost like, you know, maybe could we get into more of, you know, some planning, you know, discussions outside of our regular meetings, very much like what you folks do. You have your work sessions, and those are invaluable to you guys, you know, discussing some of the issues, but we just don't do that on the planning commission. And I think if maybe we could just build a couple of those into the next year, I think that would go a long way to helping us become more effective in maybe, you know, trying to offer alternatives or just maybe better understanding of what the things that we're seeing here from the community and from the developers going forward. So,
Mr. Chair,
yes, sir.
just to add to that too, it's getting, I don't want to say boring, tedious, or anything else, but it seems that a lot of things are coming, or all of the things that are coming to us under a PUD, and a lot of the I's aren't dotted and the T's aren't crossed. And we're giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down depending on where things are. And coming from Eden Prairie, Dean, and me coming from Maple Grove, that PUD was a last resort kind of deal. Uncomplicated land and such, and all of our lands here in Corcoran, I don't think is quite as complicated as what it seems to be. It seems to be that the developers are driving a lot of our direction and stuff, where it should be a little bit more of us saying this is what we want. I know the planning commission has talked about tree preservation and And in Maple Grove, that turned into a pretty sticky wicket, because when we started talking about it, a lot of the property owners just went out and decided to start cutting down all the trees on all of their properties. That's something I don't want to do. I don't know if we want to use that that terminology. Another one that I think might work would be tree restoration, which preserves trees and plants more in developments and those kind of things, figuring out a way to give credits to developers and landowners to do stuff like that, just kind of thinking a little bit deeper on stuff. But while the PUD is a nice tool, I just don't think it should be, everything should come to us as a PUD. The last year or so since I've been on the planning commission, the Ravinia, all additions that came back, there was always a variation or a change, or we want to change this, we want to change what's the look because this is better, it fits us more, and they could do that under a PUD. And in my mind, I just think it would be nice to kind of ground everybody, put things a little bit more in stone when it comes to a development and stuff like that, not leave it be an open slate from start to finish. I'd like a little bit more control over that if we can do that. So just a few thoughts on my side.
Yeah.
Dean,
Chair,
we did table, Dean, we did table one development because it was brought to us and just about everything was incomplete.
Right.
And it was that that truck tire place on 116. And I think when we see the staff recommends approval, it shouldn't be seen as a foregone conclusion. And I feel that sometimes it's almost viewed that way. But that particular application was so deficient when it was brought to us that I just couldn't let that one slide. There was so much that was not represented in the application.
Right.
And what it came down to was, again, the developer was pushing this to meet the construction schedule. That's what came out when there was further questioning. And I understand that there's a construction schedule, but we shouldn't be answering to that in the bigger picture. I know they have the 60-day rule and all of those protections, but I know that that was one example where I feel like we did push back and say, no, what we're going to approve here is going to bear no resemblance to the final item based on the comments from engineering and surveyors. I know, Dean, that you had some concerns. I think you voted nay at that one. And I'm certainly not bringing that up to try and debate that with you now. It's just a question of what is a complete application. I absolutely get what you're saying about PUDs, but I also feel too that often we're presented with incomplete applications and yet staff is recommending approval. And it gets to the point on the basis of what? It's missing this, this, and this, you know. So what are we approving?
Yeah.
So anyway,
and to
that's my thoughts.
To that, Meredith, too, there was a number of times where it said we could not deny or we could not table because everything was correct. And I think when we went through like Eagle Brook, and I just, my thoughts on Eagle Brook was 101 is not going to handle that traffic, and Hackamore was not even ready to handle any resemblance of that traffic. And we found that, but to kind of be told that we couldn't table or we could not deny, I didn't like that much at all. So thank you on those comments and stuff. I just, I know there's a lot of these places that need to be, and it may be a system issue or an issue related to the amount of staff we have that can help dot the I's and cross the T's and make it not a PUD. You know, Kendra and her staff, it may be one of those things where they want to hit the timeline, they want to hit that stuff, and we'll take care of all of this before it gets to the council. The last council meeting, I heard Mayor Thomas say, you know, he expected things to be ready and approved and ready for them to approve. And a lot of the questions don't even need to be asked at the time of the council meeting. And that just seems like it just is a rubber stamp kind of deal. And it's just going to go through no matter what anybody says or feels. And that's what I think we're here for as a planning commission. We're here to hash out those things and pass it on to the council, not knowing exactly what they want, but give them a good base to make their decisions on whether or not to approve or deny kind of deal. So it's nice to see change. Again, PUD, all of the ordinances we have and stuff are there for a reason, but we seem to always live in the 14 years I've lived here and I've watched and seen these things, it seems everything has come through with a PUD, and that's in my mind the city not having quite as much as control as what we as the citizens on the planning commission, the volunteer group, and the council and the mayor have. We should be able to say a little bit more of what we'd like to see and how we'd like to see our city grow.
Okay.
I just want to add one more comment to that, Dean. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You know, the PUD does give us a lot of discretion. It's built into, when you read the language of the PUD, it talks about design flexibility and the discretion that we have in reviewing that we're getting a higher level of design. And I think part of that is that we have to hold the contractor's feet, the developer's feet to the fire on getting good design back. I understand the concerns about the PUD and how development seems to be coming through on that platform in the application. I see that a lot in the city of Minneapolis. I think there could be better language defining the PUD in our code where it allows for flexibility, but it closes that door on asking for one thing after another, which is what we've seen again and again. But what I wouldn't want to see is a lack of flexibility written into our development, into the development principles in our code. And I don't think that's what anyone wants either. What I'm saying is I think that the PUD is a useful tool. It does give us discretion, but we do have to put our foot down and say, no, that's not good design. That's not part of the bargain. This is what we want to see. And it's a lot to do. So I just wanted to add that in.
Chair, this is Manoj here. Can I address?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so again, thanks for opening the floor. My plan is to be on these meetings as much as possible. Like Jeremy said, I think once we get a packet back to the council, you lose the narrative and all the valuable discussions you have around a packet. And I want to be able to absorb that as I deliberate on anything in the council. So that's my presence here. Otherwise, this is your meeting. Unless you open the floor, I won't have any comment during most meetings I'm on. I love everything I'm hearing from you guys with what you want to look at, with looking at the PUDs, looking at variations, like how do we hold our city to a higher standard that we wanted to have. And I love the idea of Dean, the working sessions, right? I think the Charter Commission working session that they had with the council last year around the ward system was really useful than doing it in isolation. I think something similar, we need to look at pieces of our code where we feel like we've had the biggest issues, or at least the most kind of topics being discussed about, and kind of take those up during the year. Let's have a regular cadence. And I would be all for something like that, where we have a joint session and we are able to work through some of those problems that we see and kind of fix those up. So that's and just to come into what Meredith said about, the staff doesn't sometimes say that, you have to approve, and I remember that narrative last year on a few applications. And I'm going to quote Jim on this one, right? I think there's one meeting when Jim went like, I'm a 60s kid. If you say no, if you say I can't do it, I'm going to do it, right? So as a council, as a commission, we should have the right to look at everything that comes through and say no if it doesn't fit our needs, right? So I think that's our responsibility to the city and to ourselves, frankly. And with that's all from my end. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay, well, I'm sorry?
I said, can I chime in real quick?
Yes, sir, Mayor.
Perfect. Thank you. I just wanted to say, first of all, what Manoj and Jeremy said, I kind of have the same attitude where I want to try to attend as many of these as possible and just kind of get to see the thought process instead of just, getting the results of a certain vote after the fact and not knowing how you got there. I think it's a lot more useful to see how it's, how you got to a certain decision or whatever. But I in particular think that the idea of working sessions outside of the current just, set every 2 Thursdays meetings would be incredibly beneficial for you guys. So I 100% support that, trying to get some of those set up. It's kind of the same thing, or maybe it would be in addition to that, we have a goal setting session set up. I don't know if maybe we could extend an invite specifically to the Planning Commission for a portion of that. We're still kind of working on the schedule of that, but I feel like there's going to be a lot of overlap between what we're going over as a council and some things that sounds like you guys want to talk through and think through. So maybe it would be beneficial to everyone to have part of that be a joint meeting.
Okay, yeah.
Tom, that's a good call. Brad, I think I'll direct this to you. Is this you? Can we get the chairs of all the commissions into those meetings if they are available during those meetings at least? So the charter, planning, parks.
Chair members and Councilmember Thomas, yeah, that'll be on the agenda next Thursday for the city council. I kind of have that teed up for part of the discussion. One of the challenges we will have is determining what type of meeting you want to have, whether it be in person or virtual. And I'm getting too far afield off topic here, but if it is going to be in person, really our only option is Public Works Building. And with that, having all the commissioners present certainly isn't likely, but maybe a few of each commission is possible. But yeah, that's for the council to talk about next week at the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So in our agenda, I suggest we formally move to 7A in our annual report. Does anybody have anything that they would like to add to the annual report and whatnot? I mean, again, most of it is a review of our activities over the year. I know last year, I think I was out of town. I was not able to present this to the city council, but I will. And I think, maybe, we can speak to, again, I think the COVID issue and the significance of some of the work that we did under those conditions and whatnot. So if there's anybody that would like to change the first part of that memo, got any additions, not corrections, but would like to reword anything, Brad, when are we scheduled to give this to the city council? Wasn't that usually in like March or something? Or
Mr. Chair, good memory. It's typically been in March. I have it tentatively scheduled this year, however, on February 25th. I might push that back. It just really depends on how many agenda items we have for the city council. It looks like Tavera was going to be at the February meetings. That's probably going to be delayed to March. So tentatively, it's the February 25th meeting. If that's the case, and Chair, you want to be there, perhaps you and Commissioner Shulak could swap meetings.
Is that the last week of February? Is that before or after Wednesday?
Thursday.
So my annual crash and burn snowmobile trip is on Wednesday, the 24th through the 28th. So moving it would be advantageous for me, if that helps you out at all.
Another dean could attend and you could make sure you make that meeting.
There you go.
I know how to run a snowmobile.
You want to come up with us this year? You know, we're looking for new members, you know?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we are. We used to have 40 guys that used to go every year. And I think this is our 38th year. And now we're down to about like a dozen. So we're always looking for new guys. You'd be perfect. Come on up. I will warn you though, yeah, there are outhouses to the cabins.
And the buy-in is exorbitant, right?
And there's no running water.
Okay.
It's a blast though. Okay.
I'll follow up with the commission on that. So don't get too hung up on the date. I'll work that out later.
Okay. All right. All right. So commission, any changes to the top part? If not, or if you do, you know, please pass them on to Brad and the professional staff. Otherwise, maybe we should go in and start talking about our priorities for the upcoming year or amendments. Now, let me just start. So there is an amendment, or there is a code I would like to have a discussion on, maybe some changes and put forth to the city commit or city council for their consideration. And that would deal with section 1030.020. It's the accessory buildings, structures, uses, and equipment. And I'll try to keep this very brief without getting into a lot of the minutia of what, you know, but this came because of a personal situation. As most of you know, I have a 5-acre homestead. I have some horses, but I also own the adjacent 14, 15 acres next to my property. It is agricultural. We lease out the tillable area to a local farmer. And, but we bought it for the purposes of being able to build, well, we bought it, of course, you know, thinking that in 2020, when the Musa line was just right to the east of us, I'd be selling it and retiring a wealthy man right now. But that 2020 Musa line got moved to 2040. Now, this acreage that I own, we bought for purposes of also then using it as a trail for our horses. I maintain it. It goes through the woods and across the creek. We use it for walks with the dogs, the horses. We use it for part of our trail to get to the snowmobile trails. And so it has become a significant recreational use type of thing for us. We also have a fire pit down there. We've planted numerous trees. We spend considerable time cleaning it out. The land was put into a trust in the last couple of months, and that trust is for my kids. And so someday they'll probably maybe after I've been gone, but it is for their inheritance purposes. And that realistically to me right now looks like 20 years, maybe 25, maybe even 30, who knows? And so this is going to be a long-held asset. Now, at the time, since I homestead this, and it is adjacent to my property, as I'm looking towards the future, I can build a building on that. Now, the problem that I'm having is that, and I've talked with Kendra a little bit about this, and I've talked to Brad about it a little bit. The problem I'm having, though, is that the code specifically says that the building has to be used for agricultural purposes only. And I don't own the farmland equipment. I don't own the equipment to farm it. I do own equipment that takes care of the trail, and I do cut down things that impede maybe the farmer. I maintain the route into that land. But as I consider my retirement and my moving out of here, and that's probably within the next 5 years, the problem is that once I leave, then I would not be able to build on that lot, because then it has no longer a primary residence associated with it. Now, I certainly have a lifestyle that is not of everybody's. I have trailers and boats and snowmobiles and things like that. A lot of hunting equipment, even a hunting trailer for out west. Things that when I am essentially retired, but when I move here, I'm going to have to pay to have stored. And as I've been thinking about my particular predicament in that land, I'd like to build a building. Now, it might be a garage type of building. It might be, it'll probably be a pole building, something to that effect. But something where I can store my boat in the off season, but then the equipment that I currently have here to maintain the trails, and et cetera, and allow that to be there then for my kids for the next 20, 25 years, because they could probably get some recreational use out of it as well. But here again, the code that allows me to build that specifically says the minute that I put a personal recreational vehicle in that building, I am now out of compliance. A disgruntled neighbor could easily press an issue with the city to cause suspension of a conditional use permit. I don't know, fines, seizures of use or equipment that might be in the building, who knows? And while there would be a risk for me to, at this point, take it upon myself to go ahead and build a building there while I can, the greater risk is that when I sell this and no longer have a homestead here, whether or not then that building comes out of compliance either for me or for my kids in the future years. And so as I have read the accessory building, section 1030, I'm kind of thinking that maybe it might be in the community's best effort or landowners' best interest if maybe we kind of take out some of the strict interpretations of that. I think back to, and this kind of started after we passed the conditional use permit for that big accessory building up there on Old Oakdale. If you'll all remember that, there was that terrible accident that was there just down the road from them. But that building is now up, and it's big. And if you look at this ordinance, if they were to store their camper in it, and again, with 14 or 16 foot tall doors, I'm sure they're probably storing some personal stuff in it, but farmers do it all the time. And I'm wondering if this isn't something that just needs to be cleaned up so that everybody is in compliance and everybody can feel comfortable about what it is they're doing with their buildings. And so that's kind of my angle towards this. And it really gets down to, situations maybe where, let's say an individual has, 5 or 10 acres, with no house here. Maybe they don't even live here, but would they be able to build an accessory building on there for storage of personal use equipment? I remember back into reading some of the materials of the candidates this year for mayor and for city councilors, and I don't remember who I can, give credit to this, but there were comments and things about, we want to make sure that the residents can use their properties and stuff. And as I look in my particular situation right now, I don't know that I have a clear and comfortable way to using, this 15 acres that I currently own in such a way from a minimal recreational use standpoint for the next, 25 years. And I think that would be a great shame after the amount of money, unfortunately, that I've spent on it and the amount of time that I put into it. But to lose it just because I decide to move from here and retire somewhere else, I think that's not what I had envisioned when I actually bought it. But now that it's coming to the forefront of my particular situation, I'd like to maybe see if there's something we can do with the language of that. So if there's no objections, I would like to add a review for section 1030 and accessory buildings in the urban reserve and rural areas.
Mr. Chair.
Or urban, yes, sir. Yeah.
You would be the only one that I would be familiar with that would be abiding to the ordinance to the T on this. I see in the travels that I've been around the city and stuff, I see so many people renting out their accessory buildings and pole buildings to people to store their things in. Personal usage and stuff in my mind has to be allowed for us. I know I've talked with Brad a few times on the industrial park that's going up here next to me on one of our properties. There's 4 huge buildings that are going to be put up while the property is agricultural and stuff. And the person is saying that, yes, it's all ag and stuff. I'm seeing commercial vehicles that person owns in these buildings and such. So to rewrite it, I think is absolutely good. And what we should do for personal use, not for commercial use, not for, starting to, how can I say, rent out space and such, but personal use. But then my question or my issue is how are we going to police that? Who's going to go in and look at these buildings and make sure nobody's renting and such? And I go back, Dean, you drive by it probably every day, but the property over off of County Road 30, just west of the 101 and 30 intersection, there's that property there that has all that outside storage and inside storage. But I mean, I don't even know what that property is zoned or the ordinance is on that property. Is that store or is that commercial? Is that zone commercial for that person to do outside storage like they're doing? You know which property I'm talking about, don't you?
Dean, I believe he does.
You're talking the llama farm.
He came before us about 4 years ago.
Oh, it was longer than that.
He came before us about 4 years ago. I believe he was it longer than that? And I believe a neighbor complained about the use of this property and that's what prompted it.
So that is commercial then?
So he is
No. I
don't know how it's zoned, but he does have a license to operate the business.
Okay.
Yeah, it came, well, originally, I bet it was 10 years ago. And he had lost his business. And,
No, it couldn't have been. I haven't been on the commission 10 years.
well, I think he asked for an expansion.
It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, but yeah, originally.
Yeah, it was probably 2013.
Okay. And
but again, my point is we've got a lot of people that are not abiding by the ordinances, and you're contemplating building a building and making sure you have a tractor in it at least. Personal use on buildings on acreage and such, I think it's got to be rewritten so that the property owners that we have existing in our city right now can use it appropriately. While I understand the usage or the ordinance of over 20 acres, it's considered agricultural, and the landowner can put as many buildings on it as they want. That's great, but commercial business out of those buildings, those kind of things, who's going to police that?
That's a great question, Dean. And yeah, you know, maybe I just, you know, maybe as being a planning commission member, I just want to make sure I do things right.
Yeah.
But you know, I think in changing it, yeah, there's probably nothing that we're going to do that's going to prevent that kind of stuff. You know, I think, you know, I mean, my conditional use permit for my existing horse barn says that I can't use it for commercial purposes and things like that, and I don't ever intend to. But I, you know, I'd be lying if I didn't think, well, why don't I just go and build, you know, a bunch of big buildings and lease them out and store them? But I knew that that would just inherently be wrong, and there'd probably be a lot of pushback from my neighbors, and it's not really what I want to do. But, you know, for the next 20 years, if I can at least just keep, you know, some of my personal stuff in a, you know, moderate sized building and maintain my little 15 acres here now and in the future for my kids, that's all I ask. Any other comments or questions about adding that to our wish list or our list of, I hate to say it a priority because it's so personal. I don't want to make it everybody's priority, but if we think we're having issues and there's some cleanup that we can do with this, does anybody have any objection to adding it?
I do not.
At least get the ball going. Okay.
Well, I think we had, if you guys can hear me, we had 2 or 3 different accessory building pieces come up in 2020. So I don't think it's unusual.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, when I talked with Kendra, what makes this situation me wanting to build on that is that it would become the primary structure on some ag land that would not be agriculturally used. And that's the sticking point. And you know, there were some suggestions at how maybe I get around that, or, you know, but again, I want to make it simple for me. I don't know that this is something I want to do, but, you know, if it's something that maybe we do when I move out of here, or my kids want to maybe do someday, at least they have that ability, even if I'm not here. And I think that's just one more way to clear a hurdle. So. Yes, sir.
To kind of guide some further discussion. So looking at the template that's being followed for your report out for the annual summary, there's a really good list of all the different topics that have been covered by the Planning Commission. What I'd be interested in hearing from you folks is, where do you feel like we did a good job as a city of approaching the vision that we've put forward in the comprehensive plan, and where have you observed us going in the opposite direction? So, you know, what are the strengths that you're seeing in terms of how the kinds of projects that we're getting into the city, you know, mesh with our vision, and where we're falling short of that vision, what do you see as opportunities to bring us closer to the vision? So it's a nice list that we've got, but what I really like to see from you guys, beyond just the ordinances, which I think are important enough, from a systems perspective, holistically, do we have the right partners in development? Do we have the right vendors to the city? Are you getting thoughtful proposals? And what can we do as a council to support you and your efforts to sort of filter all of these things that are coming through with that vision in mind?
Okay, all right. So you would like to see that as part of our annual report, or in our vision for 2021?
I think in your report from 2020, to sort of conduct it as almost like I like to use the phrase blameless autopsy. So we're looking at the corpse of 2020. Without assigning blame to particular people or issues, what did we learn? What are things that went well? What are things that we would have liked to have seen go differently? And within the systems that we're working within, what drove those things? So that we know in 2021, not just what are the specific ordinances we want to revisit, but what were the major obstacles that we confront over and over and over again, so that the council can try to address those.
Okay. All right. Well, Thank you, Councilmember Nichols. I'll tell you what, I'll be glad to go and write a narrative to that end, but I will share it with each of you commission members for your input and additions, deletions, or changes. Is that fair?
Very much so.
That's fair. I mean, I had a few, I know, and if this is not the right forum, I'm fine with that. Just to go back to the 2040 comprehensive plan, I think one of my disappointments this year, specifically with the new Tavara edition, is we do a lot of work with natural resources and denoting things as ecologically significant natural areas. And when it came time to that development, we basically shredded 60% of the naturally identified areas of ecologically significant natural areas, up to and including what was identified by the arborist hired by the developer as continuous forests. So
Yeah.
I'm not against development, but if we are going to put something in the comprehensive plan, and I know staff does a good job of saying this is part of the plan, and we do a really good job of saying, well, this is an exception and we need to go to the planning commission. Why natural resource inventory areas or ecologically significant natural areas are given short shrift, that to me doesn't fit the city vision of rural character. And I know that can be a very wide brushstroke of what everyone's interpretation of rural character is. So something around our existing green space planning. We don't have to look any further than Plymouth and see what's gone on with the $25 million lawsuit over Hollydale and the amount of fight and struggle. That's going to happen with Shamrock at some point in the next decade. So, you know, defining what those green spaces are and what are important to our city, and putting things that, if it's in the comp plan, it's an important thing to us. If we're going to allow a development to just destroy what we have put in a comp plan as ecologically significant areas, I have a hard time with that. The other thing related to that I know that's going to come up is somehow identifying more clearly these ag transition areas. It's gone from, I think, a 3-year window or 5-year window, Brad, that you have to kind of get approval to almost immediately. Within a year, you could move from an ag transition to rural residential. So for a city like ours, that is a very, very significant change in how quickly things are going to move from a property application or what people can do with properties. So something about identifying that. And then we spent at least 3 meetings talking about development rights with property adjacencies. This came up on the Rolling Hills Road development with someone that had an adjacent property that ended up buying, which wasn't the intent of the developer or the neighbors, but basically a transference isn't the correct term, but basically using adjacency property rights with combined touching parcels to allow additional housing units to be put on a what was sold as a single property off of Rolling Hills Road. So it seems like we were a little bit behind that, and I think more of those are going to come up. We've had 2 come up in the last 14 months, one off of Larkin Road and this one off of Rolling Hills Road. So I'm big on, if we're going to put the comp plan in and we spend so much time doing it, I don't know why certain pages of the comp plan aren't as important, but sewer and water is the most important. Like, I understand economic viability standpoint, but the comp plan should be important for all pages. Otherwise, why would we have them? So that would be my pieces there. And then the last thing that we don't talk about on Planning Commission, and COVID's kind of brought this up, and you guys can probably tell from the delay, is do we have a comprehensive plan around internet connectivity? Clearly, with more people working from home or telecommuting, we're a bedroom community here in Corcoran, and I can promise you that the internet at City Hall or the internet in the new developments is very different than probably what Meredith and Dean and I have. And That's just the fact of the matter. And we've had many people come to the council meetings to bring that up. I don't know where Planning Commission fits in with that, or where the comp plan fits in with internet connectivity. I know the state's not going to help us out with qualifying for rural connectivity, but something at least showing the citizens that there's multiple levels of whether we're using that as part of PUD or including that with MUSA or sewer and water, something that shows in addition to sewer and water that we've got a plan for internet connectivity. And how Planning Commission works within that, I don't know. But that seems to have come up quite a bit in the last 12 months.
Excellent.
Well, that was one I never would have guessed that, but it's a valid point. I think we all hope that maybe someday we can all get back to being at City Hall, but for those that do look at these meetings from the outside and may never come back to City Hall again, yeah, if they don't get the connectivity, they might be missing out on their participation. So, okay, well, why don't we do this? I'll go ahead and maybe, and Commissioner Dickman, you brought up some interesting things. So, I would say to the other fellow commissioners, if there's particular issues, the things you saw go good, but the things that still kind of get you in the crawl, feel free to send me an email.
Trying to speak up. She's on the chat.
What's that?
Before we close this topic, it looks like Meredith.
Wanted to,
Yeah.
I wanted to add.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted, if we're discussing goals that we wanted to add for the 2021, it sounds like we are here. I wanted to piggyback onto what Dean first brought up about the tree preservation policy, tree preservation ordinance, kind of weaving in what you brought up and then also what Jeff brought up. I'd kind of like to rename it to be more of a natural resources preservation ordinance. So it broadens the topic to be away from the focus of trees. It's going to include trees, but it's going to include everything that's tied to our natural resources, because as Jeff said, it appears in our 2030 plan, 2040 comp plan. But anything that's water appears to be covered by the Elm Creek watershed management. And everything that isn't water, that's dirt or trees, it's kind of unprotected in a lot of ways. And so I think that we need to approach it from that more holistic term. The other thing I wanted to bring up is to kind of float with other commissioners is some kind of sustainability mission. What is the views of the city towards sustainable building and sustainable development? A lot of cities have adopted mission statements that talk about sustainable building methods or development methods. There's different programs available statewide that cities can participate in. So the question is, it's important to me. I'd like to know more about it. I'm wondering, is it something that other commissioners have had concerns or thoughts about?
Well, Commissioner Wu, I be honest with you, I haven't given that much thought. I know, when it comes to sustainability, the government only does it one of two ways. They either force you to do it or they incent you to do it. I'm not aware of anybody that forcibly, anything that resembles forcibly making you do sustainable activities, especially with regard to building homes. But if there are state programs out there, if that's something that the city needs to promote in order to help participation in them, I think that's probably obviously a city council issue. I don't know what role we would play in that, but I think your point is good. to think of it, yeah, I don't know that we've ever had an official policy in the city about sustainability on anything other than, I know we didn't like, we got a moratorium on solar panel, solar fields. So that's about all I know from the city standpoint.
I think it's Solar Gardens, Dean, and
Solar gardens. I knew there was something there. I was missing it, but
yes.
thank you.
Yes.
Well, what I can do is I could find some examples. I think I did bring this up one time in open forum about 2 years ago. It was at a city council meeting. I don't think any of the other planning commissioners were there. I did bring it up. I can bring it up again. And I know I brought up the tree preservation at an open forum. And the feedback I got at that time was mostly, it needs to be a carrot, not a stick, was kind of the byline that I was given, that if we have policies, it needs to be attractive to developers to incentivize them to follow. And I just had a real problem with that because for me, the purpose of the ordinance, a natural resources ordinance, is to protect the city, is to protect the countryside around Corcoran. It's not to meet the approval of general contractors and developers. So while I understand why I was given that direction, I felt that direction became the overriding rule, and I just didn't know how to move forward on that. Firstly, I don't know how to write an ordinance. I've never done that. But secondly, how to repackage it in a way that's attractive to developers. I mean, they want to do something that's the cheapest way possible, and that does fly in the face of preserving ecological resources. I'm sorry, but it just does. And if we can craft it in a way that it doesn't, I think that would be brilliant. I just haven't seen it. So I look forward to work sessions because I think that the stalling on some of these ideas has simply been because I've never done it before. I don't know how to go about it. And also the fact that felt like I was given advice that it needed to be attractive to developers when I just don't know how it can be. And that really wasn't the mission of it.
So yeah. One thing that I've seen in the past, in the city where I grew up in Baytown Township, the adjacent city, Lake Elmo, had a program for cluster housing where they would provide bonus density for development based upon preservation of natural resources. So if you had a forested region on a piece of property and you designed your development in such a way that you preserve the forest, they would allow you to put in a higher density of homes in the remainder. And they had similar programs for farm fields and trails and things like that. So the way they made it attractive for developers to have a rural field built into new developments was to compromise on density. So you would allow smaller lots for the homes, but you would require open space. And that open space would have to be preserved in some formal way, like with a trust. So that might be one way.
We do have that without, sorry, we do have that with the OS&P.
Yep.
We do have that. But your big developers aren't doing an OS&P. They're just not.
Meredith, an OS&P is not a permanent preservation of land. It's only a preservation of land until the MUSA line moves to that area, and then it can be redeveloped.
Correct.
Yep.
Then it can be redeveloped, yeah.
Yep.
But Alan, there's no other provisions for what Jeremy's describing, is there, other than the OS&P, which you say can be reversed?
Yeah, I mean, OS&P is designed as a holding pattern. It's not designed as a permanent preservation. There is no permanent preservation that I'm aware of in the city.
Councilor Nichols, the program you were describing, was that a permanent
I'm not
conservation?
sure. I think, at least for one of the developments, the way they did it was the HOA owned the set-aside land, and they were responsible for maintaining it. So it was controlled by the owners of the development long-term.
And it could not be developed. It was going to remain natural in perpetuity.
I believe that was how they drafted it into the development contract, but I'm not
Yeah.
entirely in the detail on how they did that.
Isn't that like the land south of Tacamore, in Medina? That whole area that all those huge homes are built amongst, and all the open space, isn't that an HOA? And they keep
Tom can
that.
speak to that one a little bit more. From my understanding, what I recall, they have a conservation trust with the Minnesota Land Trust. And I think it might be owned by the city of Medina, or it's owned by the land trust directly, so it's not the HOA, from what I recall. Tom, do you know for certain if that's right, or if there's some other model they use there?
I think what you're saying is right. I'd have to do a little digging. But yeah, I don't believe it's owned by the HOA.
It's a land trust.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
believe it's owned by the city. I mean, there's plenty of signs saying that those trails are private property on it.
And so who can walk on those trails? Just those people that live there?
Yeah, not you.
Yeah. Mhm.
Don't
Yeah, I
drive
can't
down
go
there.
with my
I
horse
don't want you.
Run over there and ride around.
And don't bring your dirt bike.
Yeah.
Well, so I think in the bigger picture, Meredith's point is something then maybe to look at. Given Tavara, maybe we could have saved some of those wooded sections that we all know are going to be torn down 100%. Maybe some of those could have been preserved if we, traded it for townhouses. We already gave away the townhouses, but maybe we should have kept that and said, well, you preserve this 14-acre chunk of woods, and we'll give you the ability to put townhouses down in the corner. Maybe we need to rethink, and that would be part of maybe recrafting some of our PUD, going along with the natural resources preservation policy, and then with sustainability and things like that. Maybe they got some, cross connections. So
I don't know if you can see this. So this is an example of the kind of development that resulted in Lake Elmo and also other cities around this, like Scandia. This particular one is in Scandia. So the conventional development style, everybody's got their, quarter to third of an acre. What they would do is instead, everybody gets a much smaller, like a city-sized lot. So the home is on a much smaller footprint, but then the surrounding environment is preserved. I think typically they'll have the streets narrower, so they might do like a one-way loop around clusters of homes, so there's less. The homes being closer together also results in lower utility costs because you're not running pipes all over the entirety of the 125 acres. So there's a variety of incentives to doing it this way, but the city's got to be able to compromise on density to do it. And that's, I think, how they try to make it attractive for the developer.
And it has to be written. That's the key. I think if there's options, just like we went through, I think 2 meetings ago, Meredith, with design recommendations, if there's things about that where we're providing different options that staff can go to, because staff is doing it as far as this is what code is, this is the direction that we get from elected officials, and this is where we go from when we're kind of calling balls and strikes. But if we have options, I think perhaps that's what the goal should be, is how do we explore what some of these options, whether it's Medina or Maple Grove, and kind of cherry pick some of the best, and then maybe see what maybe some of the things haven't worked out so well. But now seems like the time. We've just started getting into townhouses. We've just started doing some of these things that maybe limits a little bit of the PUDs, or at least gives us more tools in the toolbox of PUDs, so that as we're going through some of this give and take, we have things that we value as a city, just like we talked about in last year, where we kind of held firm on garage facing and some of the other things around side and rear setbacks, that we said, no, we're aligned from a commission and a council that this is what we have as priorities or values together.
well, I'll tell you what, these sound like great topics for our hopeful future work sessions, don't they?
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Schulak.
Okay, just really quickly, I have written down that I wanted to bring up affordable housing. And I don't know how that would, what it would look like, how it would be done. But I know some people in Corcoran and from outside of Corcoran who would love to live in Corcoran if they could afford a place to live. I know my two sons are two examples. And if there were if there was a couple of apartment buildings, or if there was, you know, through my patrols, I got to know a lot of people, and especially in a lot of the new developments, it was always mostly the case that if it was a younger couple, both of them were working in order to afford to live where they're living. And one thing that we don't have is a place for my youngest son to get an apartment, sort of get on his feet, become a bigger part of the city and everything like that. So again, I don't know how that would develop, or if it's something that any builders would be interested in. But and affordable, I mean, you know, just a fraction of what a mortgage would be in some of these places, just to help young people get a good start.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I can jump in there.
Yes.
I made some notes, and actually I'll put it underneath the category. The first thing was in the draft is process ordinance amendments as required by the 2040 comp plan. Within the 2040 comp plan, we are required to develop a philosophy and plan on affordable housing. So I think that's well within the wheelhouse of the Planning Commission over the next couple of years, if not this year.
Okay. All
Mr.
right,
Chair,
good. Yes, sir.
just one of the issues that we ran into on affordable housing in Maple Grove, we made it affordable, but we couldn't, there was nothing at that time we could do to ensure that it went to people that could only afford affordable. And I'm going to use an example of the stuff, the properties down kind of by Barley's Lunds in downtown Maple Grove. Those townhouses were intended to go towards be affordable. And what actually happened was a number of people purchased those properties to live in Monday through Thursday or Friday during the week. And then they went up to their $600,000 cabin up north. You know, they didn't have to take care of anything because they were a part of an association, those kind of things. So my question is how do we make it affordable, and how do we target it to go to people that can only afford affordable, if that makes sense? Am I saying that right, Jim?
Yeah, yeah.
How do we do that?
Yeah.
And then the other question is we ended up, Maple Grove ended up wanting, or somebody wanted to proceed on a lawsuit related to unfair housing act. I mean, we got around that. We had tremendous number of Section 8 houses in Maple Grove, but they weren't labeled. They weren't targeted to be neighborhoods and stuff. They were strewn all over the city, and we avoided that lawsuit. But how do we make sure we avoid all of those things within Corcoran? I don't know. That's one of those things that I'm not schooled on and such, but I'm sure we'll find somebody that is.
Yeah. No, thank you, Dean.
I think that might speak to, do we have the right resources or expertise at our disposal as we're crafting some of these things? Do we, as we're looking for a future planner to replace the planner that we weren't able to retain, maybe we need somebody at a higher level who can speak to some of those bigger picture design questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think a lot of the ideas that have been brought up are certainly noteworthy. But I can't help just, you know, putting it into historical context here. We only have a few developers that pretty much maintain development in this area: M&I, Pulte, and Lennar. So I don't see Lennar doing anything with affordable housing. You know, I mean, their affordable housing starts at $450, according to them. M&I think builds probably some of the most affordable housing, only because it is some of the smallest stuff that we have there, you know, on the east part of the city. And I don't see any of them doing anything with, you know, solar or any renewable, you know, sustainable type of stuff. So I think a lot of these might all be great things, but how do we make available the land to people that will do it legitimately, you know, the way it was intended, when really, you know, our developers are buying up our land, you know, 500 acres at a time and putting in 600 homes. So, you know, if this is something that continues, I don't know how we pass any of these policies without getting more diverse, you know, developers in our community. And be honest with you, that's my number one fear of our development. When, you know, Councilor Nichols, you brought up, well, I'd like to see, you know, what do you think about this, that, and the other thing? That'll be one of the things I'll add, is my fear of what I've seen in my years on this commission, and really only counting since we got sewer and water, is our lack of diversity in builders and the rate at which the development is occurring by so few developers. You know, I don't have a problem with those developers personally or individually, but, you know, I'm certain, man, I'm dreaming of the day when somebody comes in and says, I'd like to buy 100 acres and put in 35 homes, and that'd be it. I don't see any of that happening. So can we prevent that? I don't know. Can we somehow limit it? I don't know that either. And those are, when you talk to the resources, Councilor, that's where, you know, what kind of attorney do we have, and what kind of planning resources do we have that can help us along that way? And that comes from experience and things like that. And are we there right now? No, we aren't. So.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That also brings up the question, and this is probably Planning Commission 101, but can we say no? Can we say let's not develop for a year and let's just ride this out for a little while and see what happens? Can we refuse somebody if all their ducks are in a row and all their documents are all I's and T's and everything? Can we say no?
Well, Commissioner, I would have told you 5 months ago. We've been groomed, I think, more or less, that we cannot, you know. And when I look at our staff reports and it says, well, you have a lot of control, a lot of latitude, or yeah, if they meet this condition, you must vote yes, you must approve. And I think for the most part, we've been conditioned to think that we can't. But the biggest eye-opening experience I think maybe we all collectively had was Eagle Brook, when we said no. And I know that there was a lot of fear about legal repercussions of doing such and this and that. So I'd like to say, I would maybe answer your question. I'd like to think that we have the ability to say no, because if we don't, well, then the tail is definitely wagging the dog, and always will, because we're not the dog right now. It didn't seem like we were the dog anyway. It seemed like we were, you know, the tail was wagging us.
Right.
For us to say no, we've got to come up with a legitimate reason this doesn't make sense. And I think we did that for Eagle Brook. While I'm the first one that would love to have more churches locally, but I think we need a balance of churches, commercial, and residential properties to make all of this happen. And I think, I can't remember which one of us talking heads said it. I think we need a planner that is that experienced and that open-minded, that is able to make this, help guide us and make this happen.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
can I chime in? I've been doing, just kind of listening and taking a lot of notes, which I'd like to go through. at some point when you're done talking, which can take as long. I just want to jump in on a lot of things talking about staff here. And I just want to jump in that as staff, we operate at the direction of the city council. And as far as us saying, guiding you to saying this should be approved and definitely must, is a pretty strong word, especially for any other residential things going forward. But when here's the comp plan, implement the comp plan, that's 3 to 5 units per acre, it's single family residential. We're saying per the comp plan, what the council has directed us, we feel this meets the comp plan. So I just want to be a little protectionist on the staff level here. This is really policy driven 100%. And we work at the will of whoever's directing us. Regarding one of the things just to chime in on, well, two things. One, the diversity of builders, I agree 100%. I wish we could get smaller builders coming in and doing, 20, 30 homes at a time. And as we get more water and sewer infrastructure, that's going to happen. Right now, we have to have big developers who have to pull the pipe unless we want to get in the game and kind of do that. But I agree 100%. And, maybe that's something we should look into, how we can make that happen. But then just regarding the staffing level, we have significant capacity to do any of these items. It's just being directed to do so and also being funded to do so. So, we really, this commission, I know, has brought several things to the council. And, I think rightly so, there's a focus on being conservative with the budget and, seeing and learning from development and doing things as we can. I think as was brought up earlier in this meeting, the pace of development has handicapped our ability to just sit down and focus some of these things on the side. So that they can be done. It's just the direction and the decreased hourly rates of you all to spend your time doing it.
Okay. Well, Brad, thank you for that. That was very helpful.
I got a question. What is our current hourly rate?
Oh.
I'm sorry, who did you ask that again?
What is our current hourly rate, Brad?
Are you referring to the staff planner on staff or Kendra's team?
The planners,
The Baron Camp.
planning commission.
Oh, you're zero.
So more time, we get more zeros.
All right, Councilor Nichols, you were about to say something?
In acknowledgement of all of that, we've got highly skilled people at our beck and call, and I agree that policy sets those resources in motion. And given that you guys are significantly burdened as a staff and as a planning commission with the propagation of the existing development pattern, and given that I think a lot of us would like to see a lot of these ordinances reformed in various ways, we might want to consider the notion of a moratorium as a way to reset the ordinances and reset some of the resource allocation and really make sure that as the development proceeds from this point forward, it's going to be in alignment with the comprehensive plan and a little bit more tightly bound to the vision. Given that from my perspective and from the people that I've spoken to, the development pattern that we've seen is kind of a continuation of the pattern that you'll see in Maple Grove or Plymouth, which really doesn't fit with the vision that we have in the comp plan. And unless we take action, it'll probably continue along that same pattern. So I would be open to discussion about whether that makes sense for us and how we could take advantage of that, year up to a year of time to make sure things really line up the way that we want them to going forward.
I think you'd probably find some support for that, Councilor Nichols, but I got to be honest, I don't know how that fits in our world to recommend a moratorium, so to speak. I think that, that's, maybe I just have, again, it's such a broad policy initiative. We would all have our opinions, but there's really not much that we can go upon other than our own personal biases for that. I think we can, and maybe through our report, we can, itemize some of the issues that we collectively as a commission have seen and been frustrated with and would like to see. If that helps the city council into thinking of that kind of decision, I think that would be most suitable. So again, I hope that occurs, that we can do that for you.
Thank you.
So, all right. Well, boy, I tell you what, I think we could talk on and on and on, but why burn up all the good stuff for a future work session? Everybody, I would maybe again ask that you write down personal thoughts and whatnot, and you want to forward them on to me or through Brad and to me. I'll be glad to go ahead and do a write-up, and again, we'll keep sending it back forth in order for us to give a more thorough report and something maybe a little bit more useful to everybody involved going forward. So, because I think we're at a crucial time in our development, and I think we all have now been around the block a few times on some of these things. So I think we all have a little bit a clearer picture of what we see as good and bad and what we might want to do in the future. So, and I appreciate everybody's comments on this today. So,
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I'll send you my notes as well. And then maybe if you and I can draft something together, and then I can send that out to the commission to get everyone's take on it. Maybe we get like a 70% crappy draft or something like that. We can send out if that works out for everybody.
That works fine with me, Brad. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Well, let's move forward. Let's move on to item 8, reports, active Corcoran planning applications. Does anybody have any questions or comments along that item? Brad, maybe you had mentioned earlier we're going to be busy. You want to maybe just without getting way deep in the weeds on it, what do we got to look forward to that maybe we can just kind of circle here on this memo?
Absolutely. Let me just pull up my document here. All right, so February is going to be, it's actually not on this list. Oh, there it's different. Okay, here we go. Tavera final plat was on that, but just today we decided they were incomplete, so that will get moved to March. We'll have what we're calling Hunter's Ridge Second Edition. That's the city well site. A variance coming through. And then probably the biggest item is the Cook Lake rezoning preliminary plat and PUD. And if you remember, that's the area just north of Lions Park that was desiring Applewood Point, another apartment complex, another homes with MI homes, and memory care facility and daycare, I believe. So that'll be a significant February application. And then March will be Tavera, at the very least, the final plat for the first edition. So, and I know I'm probably missing some things at this point, but at the very least, those will be pretty big meetings.
Okay, and so with the well, Hunter's Ridge, what issues do we have that would be make it an issue for the well?
It's simply dividing the parcel. So it's a preliminary plat for dividing the Lowther property that we're purchasing the city well site off of. So I think it's pretty straightforward. But we did ghost plat the area and we're working through everything. So it's just carving it off for that site.
Okay. The city doesn't own it though.
We have to complete this planning item before we would purchase it.
Okay.
And then I believe St. Therese will be submitting in February, so that could maybe go to the April meetings, I guess, as well.
Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions or comments on the planning activities memo? Okay.
Brad, this is kind of parallel to it, but any update on finding a planner for the city of Corcoran?
Thanks. I was going to go over that in other business, but is related now. I do have an interview. I do have an interview set up for Tuesday next week. If that doesn't work out, I'm likely starting the entire search over.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Okay, any other questions? I told Brad that since I'm retired, I'd come out of retirement if the new candidate doesn't work out. Yeah, I can step in on a temporary basis. Although I have no idea what kind of degree you need. I have a good background in real estate, of course, but I would, I don't know that would work out. All right. Let's move on then. If there's no other questions, item 8B, commissioner term update. We kind of brushed on this a little bit. Commissioners Wu and Dickman, you'll be receiving some applications and some pleadings and maybe even some bribes from Brad in City Hall about, hopefully you'll be able to rejoin us again. So, any other comments related to the terms? No. Okay. Let's move on to 8C, City Council report. Councilor Schultz, if you would so entertain us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, fellow commissioners. We didn't do a whole lot in the month of December with regards to planning items. The only two planning items that actually came before us were the rezoning of the Sherber demolition excavation, which was approved, and also the Carmini final plot, which was approved as well. And those items appeared before you, I believe, in November. And then we had some resolutions honoring Dorothy Tice, who resigned from the Charter Commission. You may remember her from being on the Planning Commission or on City Council or in the city in general and coming to meetings and whatnot. She's been heavily involved in the city, so we're going to miss her. Resolutions honoring Tom Anderson, whose term ended with the election, Brian Lothar, and a former mayor, Ron Thomas. We had those. We had budget items that came before us as well, just approving the final levy, holding public hearings for that, approval of fee schedules, year in review, hiring a new maintenance worker, general operations of the city type items. Nothing really exciting in the month of December. It seems to wind down. So happy to answer any questions you have.
All right.
Alan, do we know if the fee schedule that we have, is that keeping pace, or how does that compare to the surrounding communities? I mean, I know Plymouth and Maple Grove probably aren't fair comps, but like Medina, Otsego, Rogers, St. Michael, Albertville, do we know how our fee schedules are? Brad, maybe, do you know how that compares?
I think we basically did administrative updates to the fee schedule, didn't we? There wasn't a full in-depth comparison.
Yeah, and Commissioner Dickman, is there a category you're thinking of specifically?
Well, I'm just thinking about the home piece specifically. I know with the number of homes that we have coming in, we talked about pace of development and whatnot. Is that close, equal, more than?
Sorry, we've been using the same fee schedule for new home building permits. It's a 1997 state building code, which many cities have been using for a long time. And it's typically been working out because although the percentages haven't changed since 97, the cost of homes have. So we feel it's been keeping pace and generally working out. Obviously, there's people out there that are trying to make an issue of it, but this has been the way many cities have been operating since the mid-90s, and it seems to be working fairly well.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, well, Councilor Schultz, thank you very much. It's always good to have you join us for that part. It is the highlight of the agenda.
Oh, thank you, Len.
Yeah, and
I
Alan, I
enjoyed
think
the
this is the last time since March we've seen your face. The beard is gone.
No, I lost it. I lost it sometime in October. So.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, but thank you.
We've just had so many people on these calls that Alan ends up being really small in one small corner.
That's right. It's probably the fewest number of people I've seen on a call in a long time.
Yeah. Okay, item 8D, other business. Any other business?
Mr. Chair, just a brief update as was brought up by a few folks today, including council. At the next meeting next week, the city council will talk about liaison schedule, other expectations, the goal setting. So we'll see if any of this changes for the months ahead, and I'll certainly keep you on the loop.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Brad, has the city or state given any updates? I know like annually there's training opportunities. Is that curtailed, or have they moved to something online for 2021, or have you or staff heard of anything about any type of training for commissioners?
That's a great question, Commissioner Dickman. They've moved online. GTS is still doing some things. I will see what's out there. We do have a budget for commissioners to attend some training, so thank you for bringing that up, and I'll follow up on that.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else?
I only bring that up because that might help with some of the definitions as we're thinking about that report out and some of the things where we may want to focus in certain areas. They may have specialized points of emphasis or something that we could be looking at.
Yes, and my goal was, once we had the planner in place, to actually get the new planner and you all to kind of get on the same page too. But I think probably just moving forward, and I'll know more next week, I guess, on the pace of that.
Okay.
Very good. Anybody else? Anything else? Okay. Moving on, item 9, Commissioner Liaison Calendar. Next up is Commissioner Wu, and then Commissioner Dickman, and then Commissioner Jacobs, and then Commissioner Scholak, which will bring us through February. Does anybody have any conflicts?
I do with mine on the 28th if someone could swap with me.
I can do that.
Okay.
Okay, and then so Commissioner Dickman, then you'll take March 11th then?
Yes.
Or
Unless you want to take that one, Dean.
I can.
And I can swap
you
for
out.
the
I can take the 11th,
11th.
March 11th too, if you want me to, Jeff. No worries.
Okay. Yeah, let's do both, and then I'll know by next meeting. I know my wife's got a lot of Thursday night work
Okay.
here in January, February.
Okay, so we're gonna keep 311 with Dean Verenkamp?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we're just swapping out then January 28th, Dickman with Verenkamp, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any other changes? All right. I think that should do it. Before we seek a motion for adjournment, I'd like to then personally thank, on behalf of the commission, council members and Mayor McKee for joining us tonight. It was a pleasure having you. Glad we had a light schedule where we could open up the floor and talk about some of these things. But we look forward to maybe having those work sessions where we could dig down a little bit more into this. And, so we appreciate your support and your involvement for sure. Okay, with that being said, do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, so motion by Verenkamp, seconded by Wu. All right, we'll do roll call vote. Commissioner Verenkamp.
Aye.
All right, Commissioner Scholak.
I don't want to go. You're my only friends.
Say no.
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Dickman
Aye.
and Commissioner Jacobs, aye. So this meeting is now adjourned. Again, thank you, everybody. Stay safe. And let me know next time we talk if we can all see the light at the end of the tunnel on this COVID thing.
Amen.
There you go. So, all right. Be well, everybody.